Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Your weekly chat about all things Tottenham Hotspur, and it's incredibly hot. So apologies right from the offset for me being very sweaty, and my windows are open, which means similar to last week, you may suddenly get an ice cream van going by. I may be very tempted to jump out the window and go and get one of those ice creams. You know, quite frankly, I could do with having 4 fire extinguishers around me right now, to be honest, because I'm on fire, and not in the good way people use that nowadays. But actually, as it is, using that little kind of as a metaphor, I understand Tottenham Hotspur, things are going to get heating up. Certainly next week, I think, on the transfer front. But we're going to come to that. We're going to talk all about transfers in a little bit. First, let's catch up kind of on the week that's been. First off, if you haven't read it already, I had a nice chat with Japhet Tanganga. Went and met him at Rivoli Primary School in Leyton. He was doing a little bit with the JE3 Foundation, which, if you're not aware, Justin Edinburgh, who used to play for Tottenham Hotspur, I think over 200 appearances for Spurs, and was the manager of Leyton Orient, very sadly, a couple of years back, maybe just over 2 years ago, died from a cardiac arrest. And his son, Charlie, obviously making what you can out of a horrible, horrible situation. But he has been amazing, Charlie. He's gone out and he's helped create this foundation which looks into heart health, and also getting something called Justin's Law passed, which means you get these defibrillators placed in every sports kind of arena that you'd use, sports centre, schools, everything. And he was at this school, Rivoli Primary, doing a fantastic chat. Honestly, I must admit, as a journalist, sometimes when you get told to get a little bit early to an interview to kind of understand the whole community event you're going to, I must admit, sometimes you kind of think, oh, is it really worth it? But I went along on was it last Wednesday, and what Charlie was saying was fantastic. I mean, honestly, I learned a hell of a lot. So what those young kids, it was year 5 pupils, were learning, I was watching, it was incredible. So that aside, that's a fantastic thing. And if you ever want to look it up, the JE3 Foundation does amazing work, and all in a good cause. You know, really, really is a good cause. And Charlie Edinburgh was superb. Cannot speak highly enough of that young man. I say young man, I'm not entirely sure how old he is. He might be, I don't think he's older than me. So I'm probably just about okay to say young man. But yes, my original purpose was to go there and speak to Japhet, and he was excellent. He was very good. He's got more and more confident, definitely the older he's got, and he's very good to speak to. I had some interesting little things to say. Obviously, I asked him about training with Nuno Espirito Santo, the new Tottenham Hotspur head coach, and he said, do you know what? And this was not prompted by me. My exact question was, what will a Nuno Espirito Santo Tottenham Hotspur look like? And he said, I can tell you, for sure, really attacking. And I was like, I hadn't actually asked that guy. I hadn't said anything about attacking. I hadn't alluded to anything. So I thought that was really interesting. He came out with that. He said very much our training has been based on pressing and attacking. A lot of the focus has been on that. I later asked that question to Espirito Santo in his press conference, but we'll come to that in a little bit. But yeah, he spoke about that. I asked him about his position, what he'd prefer to do, where he'd play. Obviously playing right back under Mourinho, and whether he'd prefer to be a centre-back, because that's, having watched him in the academy and reported him for many years, that was where he played, you know. And he admitted, he said, I'd like to go back to being a centre-back. That is my most natural position. However, as any good squad member always says, he said, anywhere you want to put me on that football pitch, I will play. You know, I want to play for Tottenham Hotspur. And he said very clearly, I want to win silverware for Tottenham Hotspur. It was a really good chat. He was very interesting. I even asked him about Dane Scarlett, which now is even more topical after his goal on Saturday. Again, apologies if you can hear any background noise, but that is purely because it's so hot. I have to have that window open. Otherwise, I probably would melt. A little bit like the Wicked Witch in The Wizard of Oz. I was about to do an impression, which I won't, because that would be horrendous. But yeah, he spoke about Dane Scarlett, and he pretty much, because if you hadn't seen, Mourinho again said this week that Dane Scarlett, 17-year-old Tottenham striker, is a phenomenal talent, and that he could be an England star. He said maybe not the next World Cup, but the next Euros. He really, really bigged him up. And I kind of put all that to Japhet, and I said, obviously, you have to train against him. You know, you're a defender who has to he's coming flying at you with the ball. And he just said, he used the word phenomenal as well. He said he's something special. He said you could just see for his age, he's so far ahead of where he should be. He said he's not the only one. He said there are other talents, especially in that young group. He said, but he really is one to watch out for. And what he said was really nice as well. He said that all the Tottenham players are looking out for Dane Scarlett. He said they all really want him to succeed. They're all kind of coming around, gathering around him and really helping him in the direction he needs to go, which is fantastic. And clearly, Espirito Santo has already seen this as well. Because we'll talk about him and his performance against Leyton Orient in a minute. But yeah, no, it was really good to talk to Japhet. We had to wrap it up after a little while because we could sense we were doing an interview in the school playground before all the kids went home. As in when they were still in the school, and I could hear the kids coming out of the classrooms, I could hear the parents at the gate. It was a bit like we really shouldn't be in a school playground right now, especially as we're trying to protect this player kind of who's in a bubble from getting... And actually that was another thing. Obviously I was standing a little socially distanced away from Japhet, but it was lovely to do a face-to-face interview again. I just feel like I've lived my life in the last 18 months over Zoom. And to actually be face-to-face, albeit, at 6 foot distance from a player outdoors was brilliant. It was so good. It was so nice. And, as someone that interviews, a lot of people, it's through my job, you get a lot of your best answers through really kind of engaging and connecting with a person. And you can't always do that via Zoom. I mean, we were lucky. Myself and Dave Heitner from The Guardian, we interviewed Tanguy Ndombele a few months back, you might have seen, just before the end of the season. And we got a lot of good stuff out of him. And that was only because Tanguy really invested. Even though it was over Zoom, he really invested. And we had a translator who, I've forgotten his name, I think it was Alex, I've completely forgotten his surname, who was brilliant and really engaged with him in translating what we were saying. And Tanguy understood pretty much most of what we were saying as well. But what I would say, on the whole, Zoom interviews are a little bit different. And we find that with press conferences as well. You don't get everything you really want to. Sorry, some cars zooming by there. But it was lovely to do a proper interview face-to-face. And Japhet, I hope he has a big season. He had his injury problems in his first real kind of full season last year. A lot of little niggly kind of issues and injuries that kind of fragmented his season. But he just was starting to come back at the end of the season, and he picked up another ankle injury. And I said that to him as we kind of literally turned my phone off as I was recording. And I just said to him, you've been so unlucky with injuries. I really hope this is the year for you. And he was like, it's just been so incredibly unfortunate. Even what I remember was a shoulder one. He just fell in a really awkward way in a challenge. He just hasn't, so fans and stuff get frustrated at players, but sometimes there's just not a lot they can do. It's not like they're not being professional. It's not like they're not warming up properly. Sometimes it's just freak accidents. Harry Kane gets a lot of those injuries as well. So that was Japhet. Next up, a couple of days later, we had Nuno Espirito Santo's first press conference, which was good. As I said before, it was always going to be a tough one. He was going to be asked about not being first choice, and he was. He was going to be asked about Harry Kane, and he was. He had a lot of tough questions put at him. But what I also said, I think, about him in previous videos is he had to be on a bit of a charm offensive. Because this is a guy who, let's be honest, many fans didn't really want, quite underwhelmed by his appointment. So he also had a reputation. A lot of the Wolves reporters who have covered him told me he just doesn't care for media stuff, doesn't care for press conferences. Just not really his thing. Not that fussed. So I kind of, I kind of always felt that if he was going to come into it and be slightly, without kind of another word to put in there, a little bit arsey with the media, and he already didn't have the fans really behind him, because we know what football fans, especially modern day ones, are like with social media and all of that. If he kind of went into that opening 6 games where he's got Man City, Arsenal and Chelsea and Arsenal, I think it's the other way around, within those 6 games, it's kind of on a hiding to nothing. He's starting with such a disadvantage if the media are a bit like, meh, why should we be particularly generous to him when he's not to us? Or the fans are already kind of waiting for him to fail. I think he had to come out with a bit of a charm offensive. And what I would say is, on the whole, he did. I got 4 questions into him, and he gave me, other than one, he gave me 3 certainly very decent answers, which were very interesting and really expanded on stuff. But what I did notice about him is at the start of the press conference, we were all saying congratulations when we started our questions. He was like, hello, and he was all happy. And as the press conference went on, that hello started to go from hello, and it went hello, 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 hello. And it just started to change as the press conference went on. So you kind of started to see a little bit more of Nuno Espirito Santo, I think, towards the end. But one of the other things I was warned about is that he doesn't like to talk about players directly. He doesn't, really like to single out individuals. Poch was similar, but you could get a good line out of him if you wanted to about a certain player's performance, It'd be interesting to see, because I'm told that Espirito Santo doesn't do that. So I mean, for example, one player he did was Harry Kane. He was very clear on Harry Kane, very much went into the press conference having clearly been told by those above him, yeah, you can confidently say Harry Kane is a Tottenham player and that is what's going to happen. And he did. And that kind of shut down that line of inquiry quite quickly. He also was quite clear on Gareth Bale. So Gareth Bale will not be part of our squad next season. So in those two aspects, very much you could see he had the answers and he was ready to say something. In other aspects, maybe not so much. Like, I'm trying to think of my 4 questions. So my first question was talking about Japhet. I said about how the fact that he had said training was quite focused on pressing and attacking, and he was very quick to go, oh, no. The first few weeks of my training are very much about fitness. He said it. We might have the ball, we might feel like we're doing certain scenarios, but mostly it's about getting them fit. And he said, and then when we're a few weeks in, then I will get my message across to them when they're absolutely ready to receive it. So that was a good answer, and it was longer than that. It had more to it. So that was good. My second question was the one that he slightly swerved, which was I said, which I've been told, is that are Oliver Skipp and Ryan Sessegnon going to be part of your plans this season? He was kind of like, everyone is part of my plans. It's like, oh man, that's so not the answer I wanted, because clearly not everyone is part of his plans this season. We know that, and I think we'll find that out next week. But yeah, so that wasn't great. But then the third one was, God, you people might remember better than me. The third one was, what kind of squad are you going to have for the Leyton Orient match? Are you going to have all of the first team players back that you've got already at Hotspur Way to choose from? And he said, no, it's going to be a selection. Some I've pushed very hard this week and I don't want to push too hard with a match. Others will play just a few minutes and stuff like that. And that was a good answer. And in the final one, I said to him, look, if we could fast forward, say, 12 years, fast forward a few years in the future, what would you want to have looked back on your Tottenham Hotspur time and say that you'd achieved? What are your ambitions, that sort of stuff? And he was quite good on that. He did a bit of a cliche in saying, it's about focusing on the now and stuff like that. But on the whole, I'd say across the press conference, he very much had a theme of things he wants from Tottenham. It was like very much, certain character of player. This is exactly what I've been told by people around the club. There's a Poch vibe to him. A little. I wouldn't say they're identical. I wouldn't say they're startlingly similar. But what I would say, there's a little bit of a Poch vibe. People I know around the club have said, when he talks to you, he makes you feel you're part of something and that you are part of a bigger thing and you are really fulfilling a crucial role, whether you are the tea lady, the kit man, the receptionist, your star striker, whoever you are. And that is very much something that Poch did. So that's a good thing. That is a very good thing. And that is something I think Tottenham need. I've said this before about being united as a club. It's not just the fans that have been fragmented. I've really felt that in the past year or so, that inside the club, a lot of people have been going a lot of different directions. So that was good. I thought he came across well. As I said, he had that tough question as well about, we'll have to put it to you that clearly you weren't one of the original choices for the job. And you weren't, obviously among the top choices. And he was like, look, I don't know what came before me. That's not down to me. All I can say is I'm so happy to be here. You could tell there's a genuine excitement from him to be there. His critics might say, yeah, he should be because it's a terrific job for him. But I think, as I said before, we get to see what a Nuno Espirito Santo team is going to look like. From what I understand, it's unlikely to be like the back three we saw at Wolves. It's more likely to be a back four that he mostly used at Valencia. He's going to adapt to Tottenham and try and use the best of what they've got there. And players like Lo Celso and Dembele aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to be part of this. He's creative players. So we'll see. And as I said, I think in previous videos, sometimes the most obvious choice isn't always the right choice. And it's all about sometimes the one you didn't expect gets in at the right time and makes things happen. So, I just want the best for Tottenham Hotspur, and I'm sure you guys do too. I saw some strange thing, and someone tweeted, was it today or yesterday, that they hope this set of players fail at Tottenham because the club needs a wake-up call. You see, I get the faint bit of logic very much at the back of that statement. I get that sometimes clubs need a wake-up call. I get that. I'll be honest, I think Spurs have already had that. I think they've looked at the utter mess, really, of the last couple of years, and I think they know that they had to do something. So I don't think continued failure and downward spiral is any good thing. But, we all see it very differently. I get that. But yeah, Nuno Espirito Santo I thought he did really well in his press conference. He addressed some of the issues that I thought we were going to get, but like I say, that needs to be consistent now. I need to not be in a few weeks' time if they've, heaven forbid, lose to, say, City, Chelsea and Arsenal or any of those, and I'm asking him a question after the game and he just kind of blanks it and isn't really interested. That's going to be a pain in the backside. And, I've seen some people saying, who cares what the media get? It'd be great if someone gives it to them. But the flip side is I also get a lot of you guys asking, what about this? I want to know about this. Why don't you ask this? And then you don't want me asking those and not getting those answers for you. It's a kind of a two-way street, as it were. I don't know why I did that. I was going to do a vicious circle, and I ended up talking about a street. But yeah, so his first match, this is the thing. The guy has literally come in, been appointed, had to isolate at the lodge at Hotspur Way, straight into training a couple of days later, having immediately had to draw up a big pre-season plan for all the players, with very different needs, a lot of those players. And then straight away within, 11 days of setting foot on the training pitches, he had his first match. It was at Leyton Orient. Again, for the JE3 Foundation trophy, so all in a good cause. £2 from every match ticket went to the foundation, which is, as I've said, a terrific, terrific cause. It was very much an early pre-season friendly. I've seen some people on social media actually going mad about a 1-1 draw, or going, oh my God, this shows what the future's going to hold. Oh God, we're seeing Winks and Dyer. Oh my God, what am I going to do? And it's a bit like, no, just chill, seriously. Oh God, I sound like one of my daughters saying that. But yeah, it's like this early in pre-season, friendlies are not about, rude hooded, sexy football. They're not about winning 17-0. They're not about any of that. They're just about fitness. If you think about it, and as he said to me in the press conference, in 11 days is he going to got his incredible message of how to play the Nuno Espirito Santo way? No, he's not. He's literally going to have them on those pitches, going to get their fitness up, because he wants a higher level of fitness that was there under Mourinho. That's what I've been told by many, many people. He wants a much higher level of fitness. So that's all that these 2 weeks or so have been about. And this was all this match was about. You weren't going to see these incredible, little triangle passing, there's patterns of play that see the team sweeping up the pitch. It was going to be, let's get this set of players up, let's get some minutes in their legs, and then once we kind of build that up, you'll start to see as the friendlies go on, then you'll start seeing his stamp on the team. So yeah, it's like, who does it? I saw Wolves lost to Crewe on the same day. I think, was it Arsenal lost to Rangers? Did Arsenal lose to Hibernian? I can't remember, I saw something. Again, none of it matters. It means nothing. It really doesn't. Friendly results are just so, there's barely even point to having the result at the end of the game, the scoreline. The match itself, again, with that in mind, it's quite tough to draw real conclusions from it. And I knew that going to it. I'd say you could definitely take some positives. Dane Scarlett was one. Dane Scarlett scored his first senior goal, albeit obviously it's a friendly. But how he took it was lovely. It was exactly what you'd hope to see. And I think it belied his age. 17-year-old boy. Lucas Moura played a superb first time through ball, and Dane ran on. And I think a lot of young players were maybe snatched at the chance, just hit it as quickly as possible. He didn't. He waited to the exact optimal moment, and he just slid the ball underneath the goalkeeper into the bottom right corner. I think it just clipped the back end of the post on the way in. It was superb. It was a real finisher's goal, and his movement was excellent. And I was speaking to some people around the club about him, and And, everyone says he is the most grounded young man you've got. You get these people people that have also worked in the academy and everything. They see a lot of different young players. You see young players who think they've made it the moment they walk through the doors. You see a lot of arrogance. You see lack of focus. You see the players that are incredibly driven but maybe don't have the same amount of talent as others. At this stage, and I very much want to state that and put a massive line underneath it, at this stage, Dane Scarlett ticks all the boxes. He is very, very talented and incredibly driven. He's, I'm told, very quiet, but not in a shy way. He's not a guy that kind of is very meek. He's just very much sits there or listens and watches and learns. And on the pitch, you can see the confidence in him in his pitch work. So yeah, he's very much is one to keep an eye on. He moved a lot of good movement, a lot of working hard, a lot of battling for the ball, held the ball up quite well in some moments. He's still got to bulk up a bit, but that's a 17-year-old, He's not going to be, like I've always said, Wayne Rooney was an absolute freak at that age. He was like an adult's body on a 16-year-old. Dane's got a little bit more to do. I'm not saying he's thin and spindly or anything like that whatsoever. He is very much able to hold his own, but I just think there's probably a little bit more to, You see the likes of Harry Kane and the way he builds the ball up, holds the ball up, and it's near impossible to get the ball off him. And Dane, I think, will work towards that. Of course he will. But he's very promising indeed. Niall John played very well. Niall John has apparently been really sharp in pre-season, one of the sharpest kind of young players, and he showed that. He had Harry Winks playing in very much a kind of a sitting anchorman role. And that gave Niall John the licence, really, to roam up the pitch and properly get around it, try and link up play, get into the box. There was one early ball, Winks played an absolutely superb kind of on the turn, ball over the top, which went straight into Niall John's path. He flicked it over a defender's head, and in his low shot, the keeper parried it away. It was very good, very good. And he's only 18 himself. I'd imagine he and Dane will get plenty of chances in these kind of Europa Conference League games. Always say this as well. That's the kind of competition where you put your hand up to be noticed. Harry Kane did it in Europa League under Poch. Poch eventually had no choice but to play him. And, these are very young players, much younger than Kane was. But who knows? Who knows what can happen if you consistently, if Dane consistently scores goals, then it's very difficult then to leave him off of your bench in Premier League matches and things like that. So, yeah, two very exciting players. In terms of maybe less exciting, sorry, van going by. If you've just joined late or you skipped the beginning, I had to open up my windows because it's so hot, and you are going to get, unfortunately, a little bit of background noise in this one. But yeah, ones who less impressed me. Again, I don't want to go too hard because, as I said, it's more about the fitness side of things. And Dele Alli, who, funny enough, and talking about upper body strength, looks really bulked up top. I'm not talking like chubby or anything. He is put on some muscle up top. I know he went to the NAS complex, I think it is, in Dubai, and was working really hard over the summer. But he looks properly kind of beefed up there as well, which would be interesting to see whether that helps his game or hinders it, because a lot of his game is about movement. So it'd be interesting to see how that works. And I think it looked like he'd been told to take up a bit of a deeper role. He was very much operating a lot more centrally and getting box to box as much as he could. And that may be, like I say, just to get his fitness levels up. Steven Bergwijn was probably even more quiet. And the reason I bring up those two players is that I'm told in Nuno Espirito Santo's first 2 weeks, those two players have been probably the most eye-catching in terms of how good their training has been. So that was quite interesting. They actually were probably the two of the quieter players in terms of making an impact on the game on the day, but they've apparently been really catching his eye and training very hard. Winks will always get flack. He's now the scapegoat. He is. I didn't think he was bad at all. My player ratings reflected that. He gave the ball away a few times, yeah. But he was playing kind of in that anchorman on his own role with Niall John much further up the pitch. I thought he was okay. Nothing spectacular, nothing awful. Similar behind him, I thought Dyer and Carter Vickers, formed a pretty decent. They didn't let any goals in. Decent partnership at the back. I imagine Carter Vickers will be kind of heading off soon. I'd imagine this will be the permanent loan. Winks. Just want to touch on briefly. I know there was a little thing that went out afterwards about some people saying that someone spat at Winks as he walked into the stadium. I watched the original video, and I've since watched a much clearer video. I think it looks just like someone's hair's come round. And on the original blurrier version, it looked like a line of spit. But honestly, if you're someone who thinks that he was spat at, I'd have a look at this clearer video. It just looks like, I don't know if it's a woman or someone, long blonde hair has just kind of come out. And from the side, it looks like a line, but it's actually hair. You can kind of see. I don't know why someone's hair does that, like a wave. Yeah, so I think that was something that maybe got taken wrongly and then spread. Who else? Substitutes. There's a scary moment for a reporter when I looked down, because it was quite high up at the stadium, and I looked down. There were 10 Tottenham players on the touchline, ready to come on. All 10 outfield players, and it was like, holy crap! You know, I've got to now work out who's coming on for who out of all of this. That pretty much was the point where the game just went like, it really petered out. And that's no disrespect to the young players. It just happens because it was a brand new 10 players on the pitch, and the whole game, any pattern and rhythm to it really died off. Although, if I'm going to be fair, I'd say after half-time, there wasn't much going in the game anyway, even for the 10-15 minutes that the starting players got. I'd say out of the subs that came on, I thought Jack Clark looked quite bright, had a couple of nice little runs down the inside of the pitch and cutting in. I thought Harvey White looked quite good on the ball. It was difficult for anyone else to really stand out. Alfie Whiteman, who'd come on at half-time for Joe Hart, he made a very, very good save. Couldn't really do much with Orient's equalised. It was a good finish. Defenders probably gave him a little bit too much room to have his shot, but Alfie Whiteman, made a superb flying save just before that. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see with the little bit of news I'm going to say about transfers, whether Alfie Whiteman ends up getting a loan. I'm always told it's very difficult to loan goalkeepers, and I kind of understand the logic behind that. Is because you want to loan them to someone where they're going to start, not be on the bench, and that's not as easy as it sounds. But yeah, it was. Personally, just love to get back to football and actually covering a football match. You know, obviously the Euros, I'm getting attacked by a fly now. The Euros I had to kind of watch on the telly. It's not really part of my job to cover the England team, just to kind of watch on. So getting back to club football, it's funny, isn't it, the way it works? You know, I think all of us were a bit like, ugh, by the end of last season. But still, you have that little rest and you still kind of, you just want football back and club football. And I do love it. I really do love it. Like I say, there was an overreaction to the result, which I thought was a bit silly. If not to sound too patronising, but it kind of wasn't taking into account what friendlies are, and especially at that point in a pre-season. There were a fair few players missing as well. You know, you had Sergio Reguilon, Oliver Skipp, Ryan Sessegnon, Japhet Tanganga, Eric Lamela, Tongi Ndombele, Matt Doherty. None of them were there. They've been back at training. Skipp and Tanganga only towards, I think it was maybe early last week, they came back into full training, having had their injuries. And other players, like I said, Nuno Espirito Santo just said he'd worked them incredibly hard and didn't want to push them too far. The worst thing you could do is come back into pre-season and pick up an injury the first couple of weeks, you know, just to stuff the start of your season. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I noticed Sonny is now back in the building. With Sonny, it's an interesting one. As I've said before, he was back in the UK. He was set to come back, but obviously this is the biggest issue nowadays is that the clubs are facing is the whole isolation thing, and it's coming in from different countries and having different rules for certain countries, and there's certain things that as elite sportsmen they can slightly do differently to maybe us normal folk, as normal as I can be. And, you know, there's a lot of that. It's when certain players like Serge Aurier is back in training, but he had to wait a certain amount of time before he could join in. And I think I saw some of the Everton players have had to self-isolate after returning, but I think are self-isolating on their own while training at the training ground. I mean, I suppose technically Tottenham could do that in having a player stay at the lodge like Espirito Santo was, and then just training on their own pitch by walking across from the lodge. I think technically as an elite sportsman you can kind of get away with that. I suppose it's it's the equivalent maybe of us isolating in our house and going out in our garden, maybe. That white van is absolutely racing up my road. It's not a racetrack. It's not a racetrack, mate. Yeah, so sorry, that's distracted me. Yeah, so isolation has been another issue for clubs to have to deal with. But let's get round to transfers. Some of you, I'm sure, couldn't give a monkeys about everything I've said about so far, and you're just here for the transfers. So let's get cracking on that. As I've said, I'm told maybe not this week, or perhaps towards the end of it, but certainly next week things are really going to be hotting up at Tottenham Hotspur in terms of transfers, and that's out and into the club. And essentially that's because Paratici is running out of time. He needs to clear up and finish deals so that Espirito Santo has some weeks before that incredibly tough opening to the season in order to work with these players. I'm going to explain this in case anyone hasn't seen the last video where I explained this. We're very briefly going to explain how Paratici works. So let's say centre-back's the best option. Centre-back, he wants a new centre-back for Tottenham Hotspur. Fabio Paratici will go out there into his incredible contacts book, all of the people that he deals with, and he will line up and hold talks for 10 different players. That's not the white van. That is just a Barry boy in a very big exhaust car. Sorry, it's like a whole other thing going on outside the window as well. So he goes out and he will speak or hold pretty decent, almost advanced talks with 10 different players. And then at the end of the process, he will pick one. He was quite famed for doing this in Italy. It was his renowned style, as it were. So up to 10 different players for every position. And he's not just working on one position. So technically, he could be looking for a centre-back, right-back, a goalkeeper, midfielder, and say a striker. So that could be up to 50 different players linked that he is actually talking to their clubs or agents or whatever. So you just imagine that spider web. It's like, is it Alan from The Hangover? That meme or the GIF. And then you've got those 50, but then you've probably got another 50 on top of that are just random players linked with Tottenham as we get normally. Just random players that foreign agents, media, whatever you want to say, just throw into the mix. So that could mean up to 100 players linked with Tottenham Hotspur within the space of a few weeks, which for me is a nightmare. For you guys is going to be an utter frustration because you're going to be like, oh, they've rejected us. Oh, my God, who's that? Oh, well, what? I've never even heard of that bloke. It's going to be chaos. But it's the way he does it. And, it brings him the players that he eventually wants. Or that's the thinking anyway. So, so I'm led to believe that maybe towards the end of this week, definitely next week, we're going to see a lot of movement at Tottenham Hotspur because it has to happen. Espirito Santo has to have more of a settled idea of what his squad's going to look like. There can be, one or two towards the end of the window, which obviously is the end of August, but that's 2 weeks into the season. The bulk of his squad needs to be set and settled. You can't go into those early weeks with players still not knowing what the future holds for them and everything. So what I understand at the moment is he's spoken with a lot of centre backs, and the one that I'm told that he has a particular fondness for and advanced talks have happened for is Atalanta's Cristian Romero. So Cristian Romero, in case you're not aware of his situation, so Atalanta loaned him from Juventus on a 2-year loan they had the option to, I don't know if it's at any point or whether it's with this summer or not, is to exercise a permanent buy clause like with Juan Foyth, although this is over a 2-year thing, of signing him for 16 million euros, which is about 13.8 million pounds. That negotiation for that deal took place with a certain Fabio Paratici at Juventus. So he is well aware of the price that they can get him for. So Cristian Romero, who I don't believe even played a game for Juventus, went to Atalanta. I think he was signed from Genoa in 2019 by Paratici. He went to Atalanta and had an absolutely stonking season. Was superb. They finished third. He was a real kind of leader in the back line, and was named, I'm pretty sure I read this, was named Serie A Defender of the Year. So, what has happened is Paratici has gone to Atalanta and said, lads, I did that deal with you. Well, how about we do another deal? You get him for 16 million euros, and then we come in, but you sign him now from Juventus, and then we come in and we give you a hefty old, profit at a time when all clubs are struggling for money, and we give you much more than you've paid, and we take him off your hands, and you can put that money to buying 2 new players, perhaps. And I'm led to believe that he is the guy that Paratici would really like. And when you look at how he did for Atalanta, he's only, I think he's 23 years old. He's got a bit of pace about him. He can win balls in the air. He's very good at that. Man U have been looking at him. He went to the Copa America. He had a couple of injury issues there, but he played, I think it was a couple of group games and then the final, and everyone that I've spoken to said he was very good at Copa America. He obviously knows Gio Lo Celso very well. And he won the Copa America with Argentina. And he got Champions League experience last year as well with Atalanta. And from everything that, I've seen little glimpses of him. I wouldn't say I'm an absolute expert, which is why I do all my research. I talk to people that have seen him. From everything I understand, it kind of sounds to me, I can understand why he's the top of the bunch almost that they're looking at. And if they can get a deal done, especially I think he'll take a fair old whack of money, but I don't think you're looking at crazy money. I think they could have an incredible deal on their hands if they can get it done. I'm told that advanced talks have taken place for Paratici and for the player, and if that can get done, I think he could be exactly what Tottenham are looking for. I've said this in the past, they were looking for a leader of the back line who's comfortable on the ball, but also is a proper, can win tackles kind of man who would be suited to the Premier League. Because, Spurs have had Argentine defenders in the past. Certainly a Federico Fazio, who went on to do very well for Roma, and obviously came from, I think it was Sevilla, wasn't it? And then he went to Valencia and Sevilla, did he? I can't remember if there was a Valencia stop in there at all or not. But, and he didn't really fit the Premier League. But from what I understand about Romero, he really can. So I'd be interested to see if, Spurs have been linked with, again, this is the way Paratici works. So whether they end up with Romero isn't 100% because of the way he works. So they like Jules Koundé as well, Sevilla. Koundé is an interesting one because Sevilla would really like Davinson Sanchez. They've got an interest in him. So obviously for Tottenham, that's a very expensive player that they have. Whatever you make of Davinson Sanchez, who he's just finished third in the Copa America with Colombia, he is an asset in terms of transfer money. He is someone that they could give to Sevilla and not have to pay a lot on top or too much on top for someone like Koundé. But what I'm told with Koundé is that his dream is he wants Real Madrid to come in. They'd be his top choice. But there's a bit of uncertainty over whether Real Madrid will actually come in for him or not. He's slightly different to Romero. He's a little bit shorter, although apparently I'm told he's got a huge jump on him, a real big leap. Koundé has certainly been looked at very closely as well. And obviously some talks have taken place there. We know they like Joachim Andersen, Nikola Milenkovic, Lacroix as well at Wolfsburg, Maxence Lacroix. There's a lot of players, as I said, he will negotiate with up to 10 players for this position. But what I understand is that Romero is the one that I think is a little bit above the others and that really advanced talks have been held. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what comes of that and whether he is the man that they eventually end up with. But it's a tough one. I could say my gut tells me he's the man, but this is Tottenham Hotspur now mixed in with the Paratici way of working. So my gut could mean absolutely nothing, and it could be one of the other many players that they've spoken to. But I'd be very excited about him if they got him. I think he's a terrific guaranteed starting centre back for Tottenham who would add a lot to that back line. Really, really would. Everything I've heard ticks every box. Like I said, I've seen little bits of him. Not enough that I'd be really comfortable forming my own opinion. But when I've got that, then blended in with everyone else, experts that have watched him week in, week out in Italy. He sounds very good. And it also sounds like, from what I'm told, that it could be a little bit of a double deal. Not in terms of both coming at the same time, perhaps, but in terms of also talks taking place for Atalanta's goalkeeper, who is Pierluigi Gollini. I was going to say Collina there. Gollini, who, if you're not aware of him, is a 26-year-old goalkeeper. He was, on the whole, Atalanta's first choice in their very good season last year. Third in Serie A in the Champions League, I think, last 16. He got a cap for Italy under Roberto Mancini. I don't think he made the final squad for the Euros, but he's seen as a very good keeper. You know, he's only 26. And yeah, and I'm told Spurs have looked into, have had advanced talks with over his transfer as well. It's an interesting one with him. I've seen some people suggesting perhaps it might be a loan, with some talk of like a 2-year loan and then an obligation to buy, and other people saying that maybe they'll go to buy him outright straight off. I think for me personally, the loan aspect makes more sense for Tottenham. Whether it does for Atalanta, I don't know, but for Tottenham, because the key to this is, this is a guy who would be good enough to be, first choice. He would. If I say there's a big if Hugo Lloris wasn't there. I do wonder whether there's two potential angles to this. It's whether, he comes in with the view of being clearly told, look, Hugo Lloris has one more year left on his contract. We want him to see out this year. We're going to give you lots of game time. You're going to play in the Europa Conference League. You're going to play in the FA Cup, Carabao Cup, everything. Every cup game, you're going to get a lot of game time. Don't worry. And if there's any injuries to Lloris, you'll be straight in there. And then in the summer, you will take over as his successor. That's one angle. The other angle is they bring him in and they say to Lloris, look, if you can get, or your agent can get you in a realistic offer for you, obviously knowing how you've been here for 9 years, you've been a great servant, so I'm sure Spurs wouldn't ask for stupid money. Then they could say to him, look, if you can get an offer and you want to move on this summer, we do kind of have your man ready, your successor here, ready to step in and don the gloves. So it'd be interesting to see if they can get Gollini in through the door, how that works. The next thing I know some people are going to ask is he a homegrown? And the reason that they'd ask that is because he was at Manchester United for a couple of years as a youngster, and he was also at Aston Villa for a couple of years, although he got loaned out to, I think it was Atalanta. Yeah, I think he went from United to Hellas Verona, then came back to Aston Villa in England, and then went off to Atalanta. Unfortunately, he's not, I'm told, eligible to be homegrown because he didn't quite do, I think they have to do 3 seasons before they're 21 to qualify for that, and he didn't make that. He was there for 2 years. So I'd say that might not be, by the end of this summer, quite as big a deal as I've been harping on about for years, and that's because I think the majority of players who are probably going to head out the exit door are likely to be foreign players. I think Spurs are going to address that purely because of the players who A, want to leave, and the players that Spurs deem surplus to requirements. So, yeah, Gollini's an interesting one. He's, certainly he's got into that Italian squad. He's got some very talented Italian stoppers out there. Mancini picked him, he got his cap. I think he was involved in some of the qualifying. He was on the bench and he got some minutes under his belt as well. Didn't quite make the Euro squad, but it's definitely, I think he was challenging. But yeah, that's an interesting move for Tottenham. It's very much a Paratici move. You can see it. There's very much that Serie A influence there. And we're not too used to having Italian players at Spurs. It's been a bit of a rare thing, hasn't it? Obviously, Nicola Berti, and I'm forgetting someone really obvious that's gone out of my head. You guys will tell me in the comments, of course you will. I don't want to dwell while I try and rack my brains. But yeah, so if they can get that over the line, I don't know what that means for Joe Hart. I don't know how happy he'd be about being potentially third choice if Lloris was to stick around as well. But he's at that stage in his career, unfortunately, where these things may happen. Trying to think of what else transfer-wise. Obviously, we're kind of waiting to see what happens with Takahiro Tomiyasu. I'm told that's one that Spurs do really like him. He's kind of seen as one for now and the future. I think, is he 22, 23? The thing with him right now is he's at the Olympics with Japan. So it'd be very difficult kind of to finalise any deal right now for him because he's involved in action. And even when he does get back from Japan, he's going to have to isolate for a while. So even if they did sign him, you're going to see him for a while. So it may be that that's one they wait to say, wait, maybe get other deals done first and then kind of pull the trigger on that one, as it were. But it's certainly another talented player. I'm not going to go into him because I've spoken about him a fair bit before. Another one that people are asking about, not a defender, much further up the pitch is Hosim. I don't know how you pronounce this, so I'm going to kill it either way. Iowa. Plays for Lyon. He's very, very good player. Spurs have been linked with him at the moment. What I'd say for him, I don't want to be the bearer of it, having brought some good news for you, or hopefully good news. This maybe isn't quite as the good news you want. And I'm told that there's interest there. He's a player that they've watched for a while, but no serious kind of bid has gone in for him. I saw one report saying that Tanguy Ndombele was going back there as part of the deal. I'm told that's absolutely not an option. I'm told that a move for him is unlikely just purely because of the finance involved. I know there's been talk about Lyon accepting a lesser offer than they would normally, but this is Jean-Michel Aulas. He's not going to go and let him go for pennies. Spurs are kind of looking where they can to do deals where players go the other way. They're trying to do that, and be interesting to see whether either those two, Romero and Gollini deals, involve that in any way with Atalanta. But yeah, I just think what I'm told financially, I don't think Spurs are going to, at this point, enter the battle. They may get word that, suddenly it becomes achievable, or a player heads out the door that Spurs get a fair whack of money for, and then they suddenly can into that. But everything about it kind of smacks a little bit, to me, a bit like Arsenal who have got a big interest in him, Arsenal being told, up your money, Spurs are interested. And I don't, we've seen that a lot with Tottenham, and I think Liverpool apparently are interested as well. So I'm not entirely sure whether he's someone that falls into Tottenham's ballpark. I'd love to be wrong. I can easily. I'm not saying I'm going to be wrong, but the situation could change, and who knows. But as I'm told at the moment, no bid or anything has gone in for him, or concrete offer. Who else? Mostly, really, the rest is at this moment is about getting players out the door. We know that Sergio Aurier wants to leave. As I said, he's back at Hotspur Way. It'd be very interesting to see whether he's involved in friendlies or not. They didn't do that. I remember when he asked to leave last time, Poch didn't use him in not only friendlies but also first few games of the season. Kyle Walker-Peters played instead. Toby Alderweireld wants to leave, has asked to leave as well. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with him and whether he gets funky music in that car going by. Whether he gets to come back. I mean, he'll come back a bit later, obviously, because Belgium were involved further into the Euros. And then you've got other players who are coming towards, or certainly the end of the deal in terms of Lamela. He's got 12 months left, and I don't think it's any secret, unfortunately for me, because I like Eric Lamela, that the club it'd be beneficial for them to move him on right now. With 12 months left, and obviously he's one of the bigger earners at the club, and I think he personally would work quite well in the Espirito Santo team, but I can understand from the money side of things, if you want to get him off the wages, get a bit of money in. A lot of Italian clubs have always shown interest in him, and with Paratici's links, that may become a little bit easier. Sissoko, who I think has got a year left on his deal, but Spurs have an option for another if they need it. He's been linked with a fair few Italian clubs as well. So Spurs can ask a little bit more money for him, although obviously he's in his 30s now, but they can invoke that extra year if they wanted to. Although I'm not entirely sure how that works. Then you've got someone like Carter Vickers as well. And like I said, Sevilla wanted Davinson Sanchez. So if Romero did come in, and that put Sanchez down the pecking order, it'd be interesting to see if Spurs were to sell, say, Sanchez and Alderweireld. Alderweireld's a tough one. I think I've said this before, that for a club, he wants to preferably like to go back to either Belgium or the Netherlands, for his young ones to kind of grow up back in his homeland of Belgium. But it's very difficult to a lot of those clubs in those leagues, pretty much all the clubs, to rematch his wages while also putting in a transfer fee that Spurs would want for him, because he's got maybe 2 years left, Alderweireld. But if Alderweireld and Sanchez were both to go, then Spurs, I was told they would look to bring in two centre-backs. There's some debate over to whether Tomiyasu would technically count as one of those centre-backs, because he is naturally a centre-back who has kind of almost been converted to play as a right-back, a bit like Tanganga. And, if those two went, you would still have potentially Romero, Dyer, who I know is another big fan favourite right now. Yes, I was being sarcastic. Joe Rodon, Tanganga. Just missed out someone. I've missed out. I feel like I've missed out someone really obvious there. Romero, Dyer, Tanganga, Rodon. Oh, of course, and Tomiyasu. That would be 5 players capable of playing at centre back, and technically Ben Davies could as well. Personally, I think they'd still go for another centre back in that one, just another natural centre back. But yeah, this is what I mean about saying about the homegrown thing. A lot of those players I've said who are going out the door are foreign players. I said last week, and I'll repeat, I've been told that Harry Winks would like to stay at the club. The club are very much like, but if we get a good offer for him, they would let him. They would let him move on. It's whether that good offer comes in, and I'm not on the Harry Winks hate train in any way, shape, or form. I've been there at the Bernabeu and seen him absolutely stun Real Madrid in the way he played. I've seen him play against Dortmund and Liverpool and some of the biggest teams and just play really, really well. For me, it's just always with Harry Winks, it's been about finding exactly what kind of midfielder he's going to be. And with Højbjerg there, and I'm told Oliver Skipp and Ryan Sessegnon are going to play a big old part this season as well. It's just about how much game time he goes. But then if Sissoko goes, you've still got a fair whack of central midfielders there. But yeah, it's about getting those players out the door. And obviously, the other thing is getting money in the door. It'd be interesting. I saw a story in the week. Mike Keegan, who is a terrific journalist. I know Mike. Been on, I think it's 1 or 2 pre-season tours where he's been there as well. He is a terrific journalist with lots of contacts. He wrote a little piece in the Daily Mail that said about Spurs being close to a new stadium sponsor. I personally haven't heard that. I haven't heard that at all. I've heard to the contrary, but as I would always state, if it's someone like Mike Keegan is a superb journalist, so he very well may have different sources that are telling him otherwise, and as I say, he's a terrific journalist. So it would be interesting to see what comes of that, because if that were to come to be, that's a big boost to the funds. What I do understand from my perspective is that a training kit sponsor has been agreed with for Tottenham, and that should be announced sooner rather than later. And it'd be interesting to see how that works, because training kit sponsors are quite lucrative as well. Some of the bigger ones out there, they can be like 15-20 million a season, which, if you're looking across that's a big old whack. If it's like a 10-year deal, say, you're looking at 150 to 200 million pound deal. I know Liverpool did a big one, and then they made it even bigger because they included it to be the training ground sponsor. So whether that's something Tottenham do with Hotspur Way, it's a potential thing. It'd be a very clever thing. The person who'd be responsible for that is Todd Klein, who's the club's chief financial officer. He's very much a man who is now in charge of all sponsorship stuff like that. So if he's, as I understand, he's pulled off the training kit sponsorship deal. If that is something bigger, even if it's just the training kit sponsor, Spurs, I think, one of the few that don't have that. So it'll be quite a big thing for them, and perhaps that's where a little bit of money is going to come and go towards the transfers, because Spurs know they need to do something this summer. They know they do. Their transfer budget isn't great at the moment. They need to get players out the door, and if they can get more money in and put that towards what they're doing, that would be huge. So, excuse me, I'm really kind of full of hair today. Went to a barbecue yesterday, and I think everything's repeating on me, and you really didn't need to know that. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, so it'd be interesting to see what the money and what comes in, and when that training kit sponsorship deal gets announced. Sometimes when I do these videos, things get announced while I'm doing them. I'm technically off this week, which means stuff happens, which probably means why I found out about the Romero and Gollini stuff. But yeah, so keep an eye on that. There's been other movement as well behind the scenes you may be aware of. It's not the kind of thing that probably leaves supporters, suddenly jumping up in their sleep going, but Simon Philstein, who's the Spurs Director of Communications, is leaving the club. He's in the process of leaving. I understand he's on like a gardening leave thing for, I think it's 3 months. To a lot of you, that may not mean too much. On a personal note, Simon, he's been at the club for 15 years. Obviously, I've worked with him for, what are we up to now? I started in the summer of 2016, so we're up to our half decade. He is a lovely guy. He is, I hope he doesn't mind me saying, he is a Spurs fan through and through. He really is. He's been, you've probably seen him at times. He's always has been sat next to the manager, sat next to Poch, sat next to Mourinho. You'd have seen him. I think he quite famously made the news when he shut down questions about, was it Poch's future? I think it might have been Poch's future. And there was a real standoff in a press conference with Sky Sports. He's a really good guy. Everything he does is with Tottenham Hotspur in mind, honestly. I know the fans are a bit funny sometimes about who behind the scenes at a club is really operating with the club's best intentions at heart, and Simon Philstein is certainly one of these guys. It'd be an absolute pleasure to work with him, and I wouldn't be shocked if we very quickly see him snapped up in some other job somewhere else, because he's a guy that I know has been quite coveted and highly respected. He's very experienced, knows how to deal with us media, who can be quite awkward and difficult at times, and terrific relationships with not only all the managers he's worked with as well, but also the players. Put a lot of respect from the players for him as well. So personally, I think he'll be a real loss for Tottenham. Sometimes you need these people in these positions that, as I said earlier, kind of bring everyone together, who are good at uniting people at the top of the club, people, I don't want to say bottom because that's unfair, but people, the powers that be with the people that are kind of the lay the groundwork for the club, and also the players and all of that. And Simon Philstein very much was one of these guys. But yeah. So he'll be coming to the end of his time at Tottenham. I don't believe, obviously he's on gardening leave, so he's not directly working now for the club. And I can understand the logic of him doing that now. It's, from what I understand, it's amicable parting of the ways on his part, and just came at a good time, I think, with a new manager, with Fabio Paratici coming in and everything, and it just means that whoever comes in, which is to be revealed on Monday, again, we're not talking about a big transfer reveal or anything, but I'm told it's a very good person as well. I know the name, but I'm not going to say it for now because it may not be something that is for public consumption right now. But and it may be. This is a weird thing. It's like I'm talking about something that many of you may not even know who Simon Philstein is. It's a funny aspect, this side of it. It's the people that us in the media deal with, and we know they're actually a big part of things behind the scenes, but actually probably doesn't impact your day-to-day life as a Tottenham fan. But it'll be interesting to see how it works with us in the media with a very different kind of setup behind the scenes, is the way to say it. So yeah, right. So I'm going to head off now because I'm about to hit the hour mark, and I'm very aware I've spoken for a long time. Colchester United on Wednesday night. I'm back in action for that. Looking forward to see how many of the other players are then back into that and into actual match situations as well. And I'm hoping we get to speak to Nuno again, but we'll see on that. Intrigued to see what happens next. But yeah, keep an eye out for various things. Like I say, not only the transfer stuff, which I think will really ramp up end of this week, right, mainly in next, and also that training kit sponsorship deal, which hopefully will be announced soon. So there you go. That's your Tottenham Hotspur chat for the week. I'm going to head off and try and enjoy some time off without something breaking or being told some really important information. Enjoy the sunshine. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.